I just want to take you back to the summer of 1998. For some of you, you were little kids when I look at this table over here, probably. But for a lot of us, we were in this field working. I was fortunate enough back then, I was the supervisor of the Child Abuse and Sexual Assault Unit, and I was fortunate enough that summer to be sent to Dallas, Texas to a child abuse conference. And while I was there, I went on a tour of their Child Advocacy Center there, which I never even knew what a Child Advocacy Center was until I went on this bus tour one day. And I thought we were going for beers and going somewhere else, and we ended up at the Child Advocacy Center and had a tour. And it just opened my eyes like you wouldn't believe. I learned a whole new method on, first of all, in child abuse investigations, but secondly, more importantly, a new concept on how to better support victims and their families through these horrendous crimes that these children are involved in. At that time, in Niagara, back in 1998, we really thought we were doing things well, but when I looked at their concept and what we had here, in Niagara at that time, of course, we would have interviews done by fax, interviews done by the police, some by the Crown Attorney afterwards. Children had to be moved all around the Niagara region to see doctors. There was waiting lists of anywhere from 6 months to a year for child therapists. It was kind of a horror show. When I look around, Anna and Mary and that were around back in those days, you know what we're talking about. So when I saw this concept, I thought, wow, this is something we should be looking at here. So anyways, when I came back to Niagara, I wanted to look at this, what they called in the United States, one-stop shopping, where basically it was one center, and the model was that everybody would come to that center. That model was first established in Huntsville, Alabama in 1985 by a gentleman named Bud Kramer, and I wanted to learn more about that, so I found a conference in the U.S. and I went to it on child advocacy centers and learned what they were all about. Coming back here, I thought, gee, I had all this information, I was ready to go, and I knew how to get the ball rolling. So I came back and I found out the closest child advocacy center to us was in Buffalo, New York. And there was a gentleman by the name of Ed Zook, who was the ED at that center. And I went over and I gleaned as much information as I could from Ed, and we're still friends to this day. And Ed is actually helping us with our child abuse conference coming next March. And at that time, I came back and I said to Linda Filbert and Brian Hillier, who was in charge of fax in St. Catharines at the time, we got to do something like this here in Niagara. So we discussed it for a little while, and then we thought, okay, let's bring all of our partners around the table and all of the, basically our other people in the community to work together. And we sat down and we started discussing this, and we realized, yeah, this is doable, we can do this. And I thought for sure this would take about 5 months, 6 months, we'd get it going. And that was probably the biggest mistake of my life. Was I wrong? But anyways, we decided in 1999, again, like I said, we had this meeting and we realized we needed people in the community to come forward and take this away from us and take it on further. And at that time, we realized we needed some community leaders. Linda pursued Dr. Robin Williams, who was our doctor of choice with children back then and helped out. And I went to the man that I knew best at the time and knew that he would champion the cause, and he was there for abused children in Niagara, and that was our recently retired Deputy Chief Frank Parkhouse. And I'm sure when I came to you back then, you had no idea what you were getting into today. But anyways, I went there, and the reason I went to Deputy Chief Parkhouse was in 1991, I had written a proposal back then to form a child abuse unit within the Niagara Regional Police Service, because we had nothing like that. At that time, Hamilton was the only one in the province of Ontario that had a child abuse unit. And the deputy of the day at that time, who again, like I said, had a strong compassion for children, approved that, and in February of 1992, we moved forward with our child abuse unit. So it made good sense, of course, to come back to Deputy Chief Parkhouse and ask him for his assistance now with this new concept, which would dramatically change how we deal with victims of child abuse. Both Deputy Chief Parkhouse and Dr. Williams accepted our invitation, and so late in 1999, the process started. A little while after that, a board of directors was later formed, and members of the community were recruited by Deputy Chief Parkhouse. A number of influential and persuasive people were brought on board and helped move the concept forward. And again, I can say, a lot of people say, well, you were there and you brought this here. I may have brought the concept to Niagara, or at least the idea of it, but it was these people that moved the whole process forward. And it's these people that deserve all the credit in getting the CAC up and running. After a couple of rejections, and 9 years later, the CACN opened its doors at 8 Forester Street, where it's now located, in the June of 2008. From those early years of planning up to the current time, there have been a number of people that have volunteered their time. Some people are still here, some people have moved on. Their efforts have ensured that victims of child abuse in Niagara and their families have received better service. I salute all of you that have got involved from the beginning and those that have gotten involved over the years since the center has opened its doors. Because of you, the young children victims of abuse in Niagara are able to better cope with the victimization and its after effects. One of those people that has been there from the get-go and has done so much for the center is your current past president, Marlene DeRose. Special thanks to you, Marlene, for all the hard work you've done. And I have a little bit of a connection to Marlene. She was the principal for both my children and Prince Philip, so it's a great... Most people in Niagara have no idea what the young victims and their families will endure for the years to come. Because of the CACN, victims are receiving better service from the point of their first disclosure, through medical exams, the court process, and into long-term therapy that usually occurs for most children afterwards. This type of crime leaves a large impact on our community and the resources used to combat the problem. The sad reality is that people do not wish to talk about sexual abuse or child abuse issues in public. I've heard this so many times over the years. They're considered personal crimes. It's their problem, not ours. I don't want to get involved. We hear those words all the time, too frequently. Dr. David Finkelhor is the director of Crimes Against Children Research Center at the University of New Hampshire and considered to be one of the leading experts on child abuse internationally. And I just want to read a quote from one of his research documents to you, just to kind of phrase where child abuse is in the world. And I quote him, "We can tell you how many children are injured by farm equipment and how many are bitten by brown recluse spiders each year, but nobody can tell you how many children are molested each year." And that's a sad fact, but it's true. I've seen both sides of the dilemma, to tell or not to tell. That's being when a child discloses at a younger age as opposed to not disclosing until an adult. With an earlier disclosure, we can get a victim in for counseling and assist them on how to cope with the issues that will follow them throughout their life. This is especially obtainable through the programs and assistance offered by the CACN. When we do not get the children in at a young age, we end up with historic sexual assaults being reported later in life. In most of these cases, the victims have endured a life of mental health issues, addiction issues, and relationship issues before they come to grips with what happened to them as a child. And this is where, these are the kinds of cases that our sexual assault unit routinely sees in its caseload. It's so important to have a safe place for children that are victimized to come and explain what happened to them. This should never be thought of a child telling their story, but rather recognized as the courage to tell a real-life horror that needs to be heard sooner than later. From a policing perspective, I believe that sexual assault and child physical abuse cases are some of the most horrific cases that we as police and social workers investigate. I started investigating child abuse and sexual cases in the late 80s. To this day, I still have people that I assisted back then call me and ask me about issues in their life that are going on now. I think this is true of most professionals that get involved in this type of service. Knowing that a good majority of these people that we assisted when called upon have gone on to lead productive lives leaves a good feeling in my heart. Knowing that we may have made a small difference in someone's life is truly rewarding. The CACN has proven to be a vital resource in the investigation and follow-up of child abuse in Niagara. It has been such a success story that Cindy has been consulted and is providing information to a number of cities across Ontario that are looking to set up similar types of centers across the province. Cindy has been working hard as the executive director of CACN to achieve sustainable funding on an annual basis. This seems to be the same issue with centers in Calgary and Edmonton, Alberta. I've just recently reviewed the Edmonton Zebra Center's 5-year strategic plan. One of the main issues is funding sustainability. These types of centers, such as the CACN in our province, in my opinion, should fall under the Ontario Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Children and Youth Services and be funded by those ministries. Our regional government has to invest as well into the funding concept of the center and contribute its fair share. This center is truly a regional center for all of Niagara to access. The CAC concept is the most up-to-date method to assist victims of child abuse. 900 and counting CACSs in the U.S. cannot be wrong. The Marlene, that is hard to say after a while. The CAC model has also spread to 12 other countries around the world. It's a true success story. We need all 3 levels of government, regional, provincial, and federal, to support this center and provide sustainable funding for it. Without the sustainable funding, it will become increasingly more difficult to raise the funds needed to keep the center operational and moving forward. Everyone keeps asking me for statistics that would demonstrate how the center is doing. Let me answer that question. You can't measure the need for the center on statistics. That's my personal opinion. Rather, you measure the success by how often the center has assisted children to first report what has happened to them, and secondly, by the support the center has provided to the victims and their families. The center is there for between 500 and 600 victims of reported child abuse each year in Niagara. Our government officials have to realize that the CACN provides a very important element of helping child victims cope with the traumatization of horrific crimes and the support it provides to each victim. You cannot measure that by statistical information. As the center continues to grow, it will help thousands and thousands of child victims. Our elected officials need to stand up and listen to the pleas for financial assistance to keep centers like the CACN going. Then do the right thing and provide sustainable funding. It is a sad statement to say, but the victimization of our children is not going away anytime soon. Cindy asked me if I'd speak on the issue of where I see the center going in the future. CACN is a functioning center point to bring all of our services that are involved in the investigation together. I applaud everyone that has been involved in the process and the success of the program thus far. I believe the center and its partners need to come forward and work collaboratively as a true multidisciplinary team. Everywhere I go in the U.S., I hear the words multidisciplinary teams. We are missing a couple of pieces of that puzzle to try to truly make the CACN a multidisciplinary team. We need to complete that phrase that I said back a while ago when we started all this in 1999. We need to make the CACN a one-stop shop for victims of child abuse in Niagara. I believe all of the partner agencies have to come together and start working on covering off the last 2 pieces of the team. The first piece of the puzzle is the in-house medical component on site at the CACN. And we've had some preliminary discussions about implementing a nurse practitioner program, and I'm hoping that we can move those discussions forward in the not too distant future. The second and last piece of the puzzle is to get the 2 local Crown attorneys to come to the table as well. Once these 2 pieces are in place, then we will truly have a multidisciplinary team in place. The team also needs to do in-house training together, which I believe has already started recently with the efforts of Sergeant Krauser of the Child Abuse Center and David Gill of the supervisor from FACS. This is a true model of how our neighbors to the south work and function. This is a proven success model. Before I retire from the police service, and that's not the too distant future, I would very much like to see all agencies involved in the investigative process working together collaboratively as a multidisciplinary team. That is the whole concept of the CAC model. Remember the famous words of one of the greatest coaches of all time, that being Vince Lombardi. There's no I in the word team. We need to continue to check our egos at the door and move forward for the sake of the children that we serve. I stand before you tonight as someone that believes in the CAC model and investigating child abuse cases. I look forward to working with Detective Sergeant Krauser, David Gill, and other members of FACS management, Cindy and the CACN, and hopefully we can bring our other partners to the table and have a truly multidisciplinary team.
I would also encourage members of the public to volunteer their time to assist with fundraising initiatives on an annual basis at the CACN. FACS Niagara and the Niagara Regional Police are committed to supporting the CAC concept, working collaboratively with CACN and moving forward to continue to provide the best possible service and treatment to the victims of one of the most heinous crimes in our society, the abuse of a child. As I close, I'd like to extend my personal thanks to the members of the Family and Children's Service Child Abuse Team that's hosted at the CACN and presently supervised by David Gill. To the 7 investigators from the Child Abuse Unit, currently supervised by Detective Sergeant Scott Krauser. Also a special thank you to Catherine Clemens, the Child Advocate at the CACN, who supports caregivers so they can support the victims. You are all truly a team that is the envy of everywhere in the province. Thank you for all you do, day in and day out. Please give me a round of applause to these people that work day in and day out with these people. To all of you that work in the field of child abuse, I'd like to read to you a passage from a book written by Lauren Isley entitled The Star Thrower. I have this passage on a plaque on my desk and I read it regularly. I think it's very fitting for those that work with children in these cases because we're always questioning ourselves to whether we're making a difference. The passage goes like this. One day a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a figure in the distance. As he got closer, he realized the figure was that of a boy picking something up and gently throwing it in the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "What are you doing?" The youth replied, "Throwing a starfish in the ocean. The sun is up and the tide is out. If I don't throw them back, they will die." "Son," the man said, "don't you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't possibly make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the surf. Then, smiling at the man, he said, "I made a difference for that one." The moral of that passage is, we make a difference if we choose. You all have made that choice, and I applaud you for it. Know that you are making a difference for the children of Niagara. Thank you very much.